Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back once again to the Dancing Sober podcast. We're almost at our 50th episode, and I'm going to take some time to talk to you guys a little bit about what's going on and where we're at with this podcast right now. So I am going to take a few minutes, so if you want to skip ahead, go right ahead. I'm approaching 50 episodes. I'm hoping to do a live for the 50th. I'm still figuring out those details. So if you're interested, please let me know in the comments so that I know that people will actually show up. Also, I'm obviously not in the studio anymore. And it was a tough decision, but I had to just move out of the studio that I was using for the podcast only because my bill was getting a little too expensive. And I don't want to keep piling up a bill without really having a continuous source of income here with the podcast. And hopefully we'll get to monetization soon. That would help a little bit. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. That will help the channel a lot if we start making money off of the ads here. I'm currently at Espacio 1839 over on First Street, and they've been kind enough to let us use this space here to record. I'm working off of two GoPros right now, so I don't have the professional camera set up anymore. I don't have the professional lighting. So if you're on YouTube, it probably doesn't look as good as it used to, but I'm sure that it still looks fine. We're working on the Tascam that was provided to us by Tascam. Thank you, Billy the Goat. And that's what we're doing right now with the sound. What else can I tell you? How can you support the podcast? You can support through merch, like getting these shirts and the coffee mugs that we have. You could also get some of this coffee. This coffee, when you get this, actually, you support not only the Dancing Sober podcast, but you also support Picaresca Cafe, the roasters of this coffee. Also, there's Venmo. The Venmo tag is there, and the Venmo's in the links below. And yeah, I hope that I can convince you to support at least in one way, and at the very least, that's through subscribing and liking. That's bottom line, the easiest way to support this podcast because I do want to keep it going. I'm hoping to get my own studio, and so I am going to have to start to really push the revenue and really push the sales and really push sponsors. So speaking of that, let's give a big shout out to our sponsors, Movita Juice Bar. They've been with us since day one, and Movita Juice Bar is a place that uses only good stuff in their products. You can go to movitajuicebar.com to find a location, or you can order Movita Juice Bar through your food apps. Big, huge shout out to Movita Juice Bar. I also want to give a shout out to our other sponsor, Picaresca Cafe. Picaresca Cafe, where you can get a good latte, a good blended ice, a good. They have one drink called El Pino, and they also have pop-up chefs in there come in and make some food. So look up Picaresca Cafe on Instagram, also on their website. Give it up for Picaresca Cafe. And of course, a huge shout out to Espacio 1839 for letting us be in here in their space while we find our permanent home, or actually another home that who knows how long we'll be at. But shout out to Espacio 1839. Look them up online and on Instagram and come in and buy some of the stuff here. I mean, this place is amazing and beautiful artwork in here right now by Ernie Lucero. Come check it out in person. Thank you to everyone that came out to last week's Caminarte and picked up some coffee and other goodies that they had out here and came out in the rain and handled it because, not everybody's afraid of the rain in LA. But yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to be at every Caminarte this year, so hopefully to see you every month till we get to Christmas, and maybe I'll keep it going next year. But I'm definitely going to do every one this year. I have to acknowledge how much Outer Circle Media has done to get this podcast going. Outer Circle Media is the reason why I was inspired to do this podcast. I had been there a few times doing Martin Moreno's podcast, and just being in that setting inspired me to do my own, and I'm really indebted to them it was always a dream for me to move it out towards East LA, towards Boa Heights, which I've finally been able to do. But they are definitely a big reason why this podcast exists. They are a big reason why I'm still doing this now. And they will always be a big part of the seed that helped grow this. So, a big, huge thank you and shout out to Outer Circle Media for all that they've done for us. And yeah, with all that being said, I can now tell you that I have a very full stomach from having some delicious tacos next door at the Street Tacos Grill with our guest today. We recorded this podcast and had a really good time chatting it up with artist, painter, Elmer Guevara. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the DANCNG SOBR podcast. Here we are in the new location, temporary location as we look for our place. Anyways, I'm sure you already listened to introduction with all that information. But here we are with our guest today, el señor Elmer Guevara.
Hey, how's it going? What's up?
El cipote.
Yeah. El cipote.
What's new, brother? Talk to me.
So a lot, I just got back from New York.
Yeah.
In early June, so.
Yeah, we were trying to get you in a while ago, and you were like, "Yeah, I want to do it, but I got things to do, Rafa. I'm gonna be in New York."
I was finishing grad school, and then finally finished up and bounced my way back to the city. So I've been here for like a few months.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Let's start. Let's rewind. Let's tell us a little bit about where Elmer's from, and where you grew up, where you were born, and all that good stuff that we like to talk about here.
Yeah. I guess before I start off with me, I'll tell you a little bit where my parents are from.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm just gonna turn this.
Okay, cool.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah, so my parents both left El Salvador in the 80s because of the Civil War that was happening there. They lived in Huntington Park for a little bit, and then they moved to South Central. And then I was born like at the beginning of the 90s decade. And I grew up there, everything that I know from my childhood.
In Huntington Park.
No, South Central.
South Central.
They lived in HP for like a couple months when they kind of arrived, and then they moved into South Central, where they still live today. So yeah, I grew up there, 1-bedroom apartment. It was a bunch of us. I have 3 older sisters, myself, and them 2. Yeah, and grew up on the Main Street block there, one of the Main Street blocks there in South Central, and kind of had a lot of diversity there, different influences there. A lot of gang stuff was happening there in the 90s when I was a kid that I remember. But it was great. Like, I lived like in a little vecindad or neighborhood where like everyone was related. So I was lucky enough to grow up with older cousins, little cousins, and cousins and cousins, and a lot of us were like just growing up at the same time there. And it was a lot of fun. It was.
That's kind of like the story usually of the first generation here, which is like, I mean, I was born in Mexico, but I came when I was a baby, so it's kind of like I was born here. We were the first ones to grow up here.
Same.
And when my parents came, it's just family. They're just around family all the time.
You find that hub, I think.
Yeah.
And it was like, but it was great to grow up around your family.
Of course.
It was so much fun,
And when you mentioned like all of you living in one apartment, we lived in a tiny fucking 1-bedroom apartment, 10 of us, dude. It was like we didn't think about it, but it was packed.
It was just the survival thing.
Just what life was. Yeah, you were a kid, and I remember enjoying it, being around all that family and having family that, because it was also a little vecindad. I call it my little Mexican barrio, and we had like tias and primos in the same apartment complex. So.
Sure. So same idea. Yeah, same idea. It was like that. And then for the longest time, too, like people on that block never really left. Everyone kind of stayed there for a long time until we got a little older. And then some of us went to different ways or whatever. But we grew up there for the most part up to like maybe, I'd say like almost when I turned 18, then people started to go like to different areas, or some left or whatever. But yeah, it started there. And then I grew a little, and I was actually influenced a lot by graffiti that was just everywhere. Had some neighbors that were doing it, and I loved it. I loved seeing the books and all the
Yeah, yeah.
colors and stuff like
Sketchbooks, yeah.
that. So I feel like that was kind of one of the first artistic things I saw that I was like, oh damn, it looks so complex that I wanted to like learn it.
Yeah. Did you start with letters or characters?
Letters, yeah, letters, and then characters after, and then paint.
I was always good at the lettering, but not the coloring.
Okay,
I still am not good at coloring.
color. I learned color now, but
Yeah.
then it was also fun just like putting color together and see what kind of stuff it did, because there was a lot of experimenting. Like there was no proper. I didn't know proper theory until I went to school about color. So, when we would go to Home Depot and like rack cans or whatever, we were trying to get like gold
What
and
do you mean by rack cans?
so that was like the tradition,
Of course,
nobody bought it. Like you had to figure out another way.
We
to
didn't have money to
and
buy
plus,
it.
yeah, and plus I was like 14 or 15. There's no way
Yeah,
I
of
could even
course.
buy it, or I was gonna ask my parents to go buy it.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to buy it, even if
Exactly.
you had the money.
Yeah. So,
So I was actually around the days before they locked them up.
oh damn,
Imagine
those are
that.
probably the glory days, honestly.
Yeah, and then they locked them up.
Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of the initial thing there, and then
Well, tell me a little bit about your what did you used to draw when you did that, or were you hanging around with crews? Did you do walls?
yeah, but I think even before that, like just going back to like what my neighbors were kind of doing, like there was a couple of people who were drawing stuff too, like not graffiti. So like I had influences like indirectly there of people. So I've always liked drawing and stuff. But yeah, then after like there was crews in the neighborhood, and I kind of like you get to know people, even though it's a really big city. That community's kind of small. Like everyone kind of gets. I mean, probably even more now with social media, but this was before any of that was around. And so yeah, I got to know like a lot of the people there. And initially, that was kind of the start of it. Yeah.
The graffiti part.
Yeah.
And did you pick up other stuff when you went to middle school or high school? How did you get deeper into art? How did you transition from like graffiti art to like
Yeah, so
drawing other?
it kind of started first with skateboarding and then graffiti. So it's like skateboarding, you were out, you were going everywhere on the bus, and then you were like, well, I'm already over here. Let me put my name here and here and there. And then you kind of transition to like, I'm not gonna like do tricks, but I'm gonna use my skateboard to just get around and get up. And then I don't know, like I had the knucklehead days where I was out, but like I still went to school. So I've always liked school. Like I've always had like a thing for school. Like I like being there. I like learning stuff. High school wasn't like the funnest to learn about anything because it was kind of like a weird time in my life, I guess. But when I went to college, that's kind of where I was like, I was able to kind of pick out like, oh, let me try photography or let me try to learn something different. And that's kind of where I started to invest more into like drawing and painting, and I started to get more into it. But it took a long time for me to say like, oh yeah, this is like,
I'm gonna be an artist.
yeah, this is.
I think that happens to a lot of us who don't have like a mentor early on.
Exactly.
Who like we don't know what the hell we're doing. We're just
Yeah.
having fun and going out and doing stuff. But you also had to discover that you were good at it before you started to like
Yeah.
approach it as a possibility of what I'm gonna do.
Right.
I did want to go back a little bit and ask you what college did you start to or where'd you go to high school?
I went to Manual Arts High
Oh,
School.
you went to Mountain Arts. All right.
Yeah, it's like right.
I only know all the high schools because of the football games I used to go to.
Yeah, they're not that good at football, from what I remember. But yeah, it was just like down the street from the LA Memorial Coliseum. I went to John Muir Middle School, which is just further south by Slauson. So yeah, I did 4 years there at Manual, and then I went to East LA College.
Okay.
Yeah, I did my time there, and then that's kind of where I declared.
I think you were at UCLA College during a really good time for artists too. I mean, there's got to be waves of like people that come through, but when you were there,
Yeah.
who were the other people that were there?
So I still took like a couple classes when the art department was by the baseball field.
Yeah.
Before the new building.
Yeah.
So it was like it felt like like I don't know, it was so weird. Like I felt like I was kind of back in high school, but like
The little bungalows.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of friends there who like I feel like are doing things. But like Juliana Bustillo is one that went there. I met Manuel Lopez there too. He was actually a TA for a couple classes that I took there. And then there's like a handful of people too that kind of went from there that kind of started this cycle that I sort of followed that were going transferring to Long Beach, to Cal State Long Beach. And so that's how I ended up there. But you know, I got lucky. I got to work with like Jim Uyakawa, Chris Turk, and Sergio Teran.
I love Sergio. Yeah.
Yeah. Big influence for sure. And then I ended up in LB, where I did my BFA work.
Yeah, I just think during the time that you were there at ELEC, there's just a wave of students that came out of there that are doing, like you said, things now, and but also Long Beach has like a ton of artists right now that I'm like, oh, that guy went to Long Beach. Oh, that guy went to Long Beach. Oh, she went to Long Beach, and it's interesting, and there was the same thing that happened with PCC with a bunch of musicians, where all of a sudden there was all these bands that were like doing well,
out of there.
and yeah, I wonder like what was or who was the professor there that like was so influential with the kind of like figurative
in LB.
Yeah.
Before I tell you that, I think LB became like it was kind of like this like kept secret of schools where like it was kind of
low key
affordable and it was public and it was like a little bit outside of the city because it was in Long Beach, but it was still like I didn't even know until I got there like what it was. But yeah, like the faculty there was like packed. Like there was people there who were like extremely good at abstraction, and then there was people there who were extremely good at figuration. So it was actually a school that was split down into two programs basically, but there was an abstraction program and there was a figuration route. And so taking the figuration route, which is like what I've always kind of like liked and done, which is like paint figures and narratives, I work with like people like UG, who's this Chinese professor who was there and like super strict and like crazy about painting and drawing. And so like, you know, having just the rigorous amount of assignments and like always drawing and always painting while you're there, like he really pushed you to like paint and like learn it, like, you know, and draw and like learn it and not just like do it for nothing. So I think the training that I got from there was probably like what just kind of set me forward. Yeah.
So you mean like I mean, I draw all the time, but I don't think I learn anything. I just kind of draw. So when you say like painting and learning or drawing and learning, like, so you kind of like keep track of what you do, or
yeah, because when you come in, like, not that I didn't learn previously drawing stuff like at ELAC, but it was just like his approach to teaching it was like fully like European based, like learn perspective, learn like
the reasons why you're doing the things that you're doing.
Yeah. But also, like just very technically, I think like they really pushed that there, and in both ways, I think, and also to those who did the abstraction route, like you know, I think like technically there was a lot there where you were like constantly experimenting with color, mixing stuff, and learning all that stuff, you know. So I think it was just very like super European based learning on like painting people and stuff. Yeah.
At what point do you like? Well, maybe that was something you always did, but at what point do you like start to be like, okay, I got the technical stuff. I need to put my stuff in it now.
It kind of happened towards the end of the 3-year program there. So maybe like the 3rd year when you're kind of like setting up like your senior show. That's more or less when I was like, oh, okay, like I can do this technical stuff. I know how to paint flesh and the things that I'm interested in, I can kind of like depict. So, yeah, then I was just like, well, now I think it's time for me to like try to do things like that are like me with this, you know? And so like I did start off by painting figures who were fragmented or environments that were fragmented or more surreal that didn't necessarily ground a viewer. And, you know, and then that's kind of how I broke out of like just like, oh, let me just paint what I see. But even though that's a very like amazing talent to have too, you know. But yeah, I was using definitely what I got there, and then towards the end, kind of like breaking in or molding in my own mold. And I feel like it's still a thing that I'm still molding.
Yeah, you're young.
Yeah, so
Your career is young.
So it's not like I figured it out fully, but definitely I still return to like everything that I've gotten from those years. You know, sometimes I go back to still painting still lifes or drawing them.
Yeah, I think that's something that you learn at one point that you never stop learning.
Yeah.
Just always, keep that mind open too.
It keeps it fresh too, I think. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about So then after Long Beach, you went to get your master's in New York. Tell us about your experience in New York, and is it different than Huntington Park?
Yeah. So I took a year off after undergrad, and then I took off to New York City.
Yeah,
I went to Hunter College.
What part of New York is that?
So the school is split into two areas. So their main campus is up on 68th Street. And then their MFA studios and BFA studios are in Tribeca, which is on Canal Street, close to Chinatown, closer to the West Side Highway. So I went up to 68th Street to the main campus just to take like art history, but for the most part, we congregated and we hung downtown. Yeah, downtown on Canal. And I got to New York January, winter time, 2019. Yeah, so not that long ago. No. But yeah, it was probably the biggest culture shock I've ever experienced. But like experienced in a good way, I think, because it like helped me grow so much. Like I don't know where I'd be if I didn't go and take that leap, honestly. Like it really, I was 28 at the time. You know, it like forced me to leave comfort, find my own place, live alone, do my own stuff, find my own like job and stuff like that. So it, like the discomfort of like going somewhere you're not familiar with, making new friends, like all of it together.
While making work.
While trying to make work and trying to figure out like how to make money and make a living too, you know.
So you had to get a job out there too.
Yeah, I worked for almost.
You mean you didn't have a trust fund?
I wish. So let me tell you, the last year I was lucky enough to not work the whole last year of school.
Oh, that's good.
So that felt like a trust fund thing.
But in Long Beach?
No, in New York. Yeah.
Also, how many years was it?
It's a 3-year program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a little longer than like the traditional 2-year. I actually ended up doing 3.5 because of COVID. Yeah. So was weird was that I was there a whole year before the pandemic hit New York. And then that's when things were like, oh shit, like I was coming back to LA.
They hit hard over there.
Yeah, and people were dying like crazy, so I left and I'd stay here for a few months, then I'd go back and stay another half a year and then come back. So I jumped back and forth like 2 or 3 times. And then finally like I left in January again and just finished in May. But yeah, it was a lot of that, getting used to it, getting used to the seasons. And
how do people treat a young Mexican in New York? I mean, I'm sorry, my brother. How did I just forget that? How do people treat a young Salvadorian?
I don't think like they care about where you're from.
Really?
Because when you go there, you just meet people from everywhere.
So mixed over
So it's not like you come to LA and all you meet is Central Americans or Mexican folks, right? That are brown. Yeah. You go there, it's like people from Colombia, people from Peru, people from every country you can think of. So there's not like let's treat this group a certain way. Way different.
Well, that's good.
Way different in that way. Yeah. Yeah.
What kind of job did you end up
I
finding?
Bounced around a lot. I did a lot of like jobs where like we were fabricating stuff, fabricating fixtures, fabricating stuff for art installs, fabricating. Yeah, like it was like a firm sort of that fabricated paintings for corporate buildings sort of. So I was helping hanging, I was helping doing all sorts of stuff. Then later on, I found a job creating. So I created for a few years, and I created here in LA too. So it was like creating and packing art.
Yeah.
And and then I mean it was a job, but I really enjoyed it. Like I love
That's a
working
good
with
job. I
wood.
think. Yeah.
Woodwork is like fun. It was great. And then I've been like I haven't had like a job like that for a year now. Just kind of working on the paint stuff.
So while you were there and working on your masters, and then the pandemic hits, how does that affect your work?
It was weird because when it first happened, obviously we couldn't go to school, so for
So
a
they figured
while
it
there
out.
was no
Yeah.
studios. They had to like kind of figure things out. Things went to like Zoom, and I don't know. I couldn't really deal with like quarantining in like New York opposed to California, so I left. I left because at least here like I had the space to like
Go
move.
outside.
Yeah. So I just came back. I picked up a studio here, and I kind of just got to work since I had to like stay away from people. In
So
a
you were
way,
still doing school through Zoom, but you were in
here.
LA.
Yeah, I was
Oh
in
shit.
LA. Yeah, I took off. I don't know. It was just a weird time to be in New York. It felt like so. I came home.
That's good.
Yeah. So I got to work like kind of the same. You know, it was like even like a little bit more productive because I couldn't really like go see people.
Yeah.
So it was just a lot more of just staying in and making work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kept just making a lot of work while I was here too.
Do you think that any of that changed your subject matter, or was your subject matter the same?
I think it kind of stayed the same. The only thing I would add is that when I was in New York, I kind of made a lot of work. Well, I still kind of do, but in New York, it felt like I was longing a lot for like my family and the city and the sun and the palm trees and everything that comes over here.
That was a nice poem. Thank you.
Like everything that's here, right? I kept like longing for it. So I was like, all my paintings were filled with all this shit that's like from
Shit.
LA. And so when I got back, I was like, it almost felt like, oh shit, like now I'm like in it. So now it even felt like a little better because I was just walking around like pulling things from everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
So in a way, I felt like it was nicer to make work about LA in the home setting.
So speaking of that, like walking around and pulling things, and then carrying them with you till you put them down.
Yeah.
What is your process for creating a piece? When do you decide like that's what my piece is going to be? How does that happen?
So I mean, it's different. I think sometimes the idea just comes. Like you look at a painting from another artist, and you're like, "Oh, damn! I can kind of grab this or use this in a way." So sometimes the idea is just kind of blunt. It kind of just pops into your head where you're like, you imagine it and you kind of feel it out. And then other ways that I go about it is like I recycle a lot of family photos, a lot of very old family album photos, and I piece multiple ones together, and then I put my touch of like a creative made up environment that doesn't sometimes make sense with what like the photos being ripped from. So it takes a lot of that. I see a lot of paintings online or in books, and I use palettes to do certain things.
Do you start to draw it out, sketch it out,
Yeah.
put it on a piece
I
of paper?
So I draw it. I draw it. I don't do like full drawings. Like I'll do like a lot of thumbnail drawings, then maybe do one that's a little bit bigger, and then after that I'll do like a digital drawing, where like it's more of a collage. Like I rip from this photo and put it here type of thing. And then from there, I'll put that onto the canvas, and then that takes its own little thing. Because then I'm following like a reference, but then I'm also like sometimes not following it. So that becomes partially about the reference, and then not. Like it just becomes like, oh, let me just paint this section without looking at anything, just to see what I can get doing. So it takes a couple different steps, I guess, to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In your paintings, you have a lot of what do we call them? Like little vignettes inside,
Yeah.
like people's bodies. So I mean, you guys should look up his work online and zoom in, and you'll see on the figures on their body. If you zoom into the arms or the face, there's another entire scene happening inside there
For sure.
in a very subtle color or in a very subtle form.
Yeah,
How did that start, or tell us about it?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So I went to a show before I left to New York. It was at Mocha. I think it must have been their permanent collection. I don't even think it was like an actual announced show. I just think that they had their permanent collection on during that time. And I saw work by Decker Crosby. And to this day, it's like I still see her work, and I grabbed so much from it. But I kind of noted how she was using the transfers in like a certain way, and also the transfers that she was using also felt like it was referencing historic trauma and like from her view, and then I got interested in like my history and like my traumas and like the reasons why my parents left their home and stuff like that, and doing research about the war, and then listening to stories that my mother and my father sort of shared with me. I became super interested in trying to visualize that and putting those scenes into these bodies. But then I think I ran into this essay while in school that kind of made the idea more concrete for me. But Ursula Le Guin, she talks about the carrier bag theory, which is like essentially metaphorically seeing a container in different light. So like a house can be a container that holds certain things. A car can be a container. A bottle can be a container. And so I started to kind of visualize the human body as also a container, essentially.
Which we are, yeah.
And so like the stuff that's graphic transferred in like the flesh that I add, like that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm looking at these bodies as like vessels that are holding all these memories or all these traumas that also, relate back to like the historic event of the war, or like being raised around like the gang eras of the 90s in South Central. So I always reference back to like the LA riots, the uprising, and the war and stuff like that. But yeah, that's essentially like where the idea kind of became more concrete when I read
Like
that essay.
very significant moments in history that you feel like shaped this person
For sure, because
and yourself.
yeah, and then also too what gets genetically put into you when you're born.
Yeah,
So like
it comes with your DNA.
exactly. So I find that fascinating, and I think about these events that my parents endured, because I know they probably went through a lot of fucked up stuff.
Generational trauma.
Yeah. So I kind of like see it how it's like, and I try to depict something that's like kind of not tangible, because it's still like an idea, but I try to like make it into a visual. And
I feel like it's like a little extra, I guess, treat to put in simplest terms. Like when I look at your paintings, it's like it's beautiful already. Like the shape is beautiful, the composition is beautiful, the subject matter is amazing, and then all of a sudden you zoom in and there's like all these little tiny hidden stories that are.
That's like the other thing too. It's like I love when a piece of artwork, not always have to be painting, but I love when an artwork can take a while to read, like where there's like you have to open up multiple layers in order for you to like take everything in. And I love the slow read, like you see this image in the beginning, but
Every time you look at it again,
you're gonna find something. And so I definitely keep that in mind. Like, not that I want to jam pack it where it's annoying, but like I do want you to like sort of work through it,
Yeah, you want it to have some denseness to it.
For sure.
There's also these little tiny drawings that you throw in there that are like childhood drawings.
Yeah.
Right? Like little police cars and shit.
Yeah. And it's like nostalgia there a little, where it's like, being a kid, stuff like that. Yeah. So I kind of used a few motifs too that I kind of like, sort of like my little signature in there too. But I used like a lot of a growth chart is what they call it. But basically, it's like when the kids are kind of growing. Yeah. So I use that a lot too, just to try to like sit a viewer like in a certain time period.
Yeah, it gives you a sense of time, I guess.
Yeah. So like if you remember what like 97 felt like, maybe, or you remember something from that year, you kind of like.
It felt like Tribe Called Quest.
Cool. Yeah.
No, I think that's a little too late, but yeah, I feel you. That's beautiful, dude. I like that a lot. I know that you said that you this just came up into my head, but how you said like you saw this woman's painting and you saw what she did and then you decided to use it. And I think in painting more than, well, I don't know, more than in other ones, but in painting, like it's because film does the exact same thing. Like filmmakers completely take from other filmmakers. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like, oh, this is the way that that guy shot this, and sometimes they take the exact same sequence and focus and everything. They shoot it exactly the same way from like a 1940s movie. This is the way he shot that train robbery. I'm gonna shoot the train robbery the same,
Exactly.
but in 2020, and it's okay to do that, you know. And in painting, like where does that line blur, or where does that line go bad, or is like where is it okay to take and not take, or
I
is
mean,
it?
I think it's natural to like recycle. Like I think we're
Yeah.
naturally recycling. Like even fashion does it. You know, fashion does it when they bring back stuff that's retro. For me, I think it's just a part of learning. But I do feel like you have to like learn if you are gonna use things to like then make it yours too.
Yeah.
Like you know, like yeah, you own it, you grab it, but you gotta like you gotta remix it. You gotta mix it up. You know, it's like beat making. I think you could grab a sample, but then you make a new.
Completely different.
Yeah.
Like,
So I mean, but it's like I always go back to look at like even the old master paintings because there's still a lot to learn from that. You know, because they're also doing very genre scenes and mundane stuff that a lot of times I use in my work where it's just a figure sitting or sitting next to a cup or something. So I'm looking back at that, you know, and sometimes like you enjoy the way something's composed and you're like, oh, I can kind of use this angular stuff, you know, and it makes things feel like energetic, even though it's a very pause setting. But I feel like it's a very natural thing to do is to learn from.
does it in a way, maybe because you've already got the, let's say you take a composition and you're going to redo the composition, does it then make it easier to add stuff to it, like to
Yeah, yeah, I
make
think
it?
so. Yeah, I think so because that's when your ingenuity comes into it. Like you start to put like what's interesting to you, you know,
Yeah.
or like if you copy a composition but you put it in like an environment that's like more related to you,
Yeah, yeah,
then obviously your home is gonna look different than my home.
yeah.
So then I think that's where it becomes more of yours. You know?
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Make it your, like I told my nephew once, like take your camera and when you're with your friends and nobody's around, shoot what people are wearing, shoot the way
Yeah.
their feet are, shoot their hands, because nobody else is gonna ever see like that exact moment or the way that that thing is happening
That's
there.
the other thing too. Is like I feel like we can both see things, but like I'd see a different thing than you will. Yeah,
Completely,
yeah,
yeah. I think I was talking to Manuel about this too, where it's like I sometimes like to give people my camera and they shoot a bunch of stuff, and then when I look
that.
through them, because it's on my camera, right?
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
editing my stuff, and my stuff looks familiar, but then I see a completely different angle, and I'm like,
yeah,
what's this? You know, and
yeah,
it jars me a little bit. I'm like, oh, that person took this one. That's why it's different,
yeah, yeah,
and I like it.
yeah, yeah.
You know, it's like, man, I wish I could see that way. That's why sometimes I kind of shoot without looking,
And just kind of like
just
see.
because I'll get things that if I did look, I wouldn't look for that angle.
I got
You
you.
know,
Yeah, because what happens is I guess like your approach becomes like a little corrupted in the way that you want it to
yeah,
look. You know, it's like obviously that's hard to like let it go, but like whenever you find ways to like break away and play a little,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
super fun, and you always find something cool out of it that you can
yeah.
kind of later add to like what's more concrete in your approach.
Yeah, and that's my thing too. Is part of the reason why I do that is because photography can become very like always the same thing. It can always
Yeah,
become that. So I really like to try to find I don't know something different in it.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know that while you were still getting your master's, you had a solo show out here. You had a show at a gallery in North Hollywood or Hollywood area.
I had so while I was in school, I had two shows,
Oh
two
yeah, two.
solos. Yeah, I did a show. Man, I hope I'm not wrong saying this. 2021 January. It feels like it's been so far out, but it's not that far out. At Residency Gallery.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
So you had those two shows. Yeah.
yeah, I did a show there. Work that I had made in New York,
Yeah.
and then
And that's when I first became familiar with your work,
yeah,
and
yeah,
we
yeah,
met.
yeah. That was at Residency Gallery. That was an amazing experience. That's I'd say like my
Shout out
first.
to Rick.
Yeah, shout out to Rick for sure. I'd say that's probably like my first like step into
Mm,
like more of like the art market, the art world type of
mm,
thing. And it was great experience. And then I just had a show recently at MMB in May.
mm.
I was still finishing up in New York,
Yeah,
but I came down for that, and that was also another great experience.
bro. I mean, you're like studying in New York, having shows in LA. The
Yeah,
pandemic is going on, but
yeah. I mean, like I remember someone told me this in school. It's like it's good to like be coming out of school like with a good momentum.
Mm,
So I mean, I feel very blessed to have the opportunity to have like
yeah,
had something already there, like even before I left,
definitely, yeah.
So yeah, and it's great, and I love the challenge. Every time I get offered a show like that, I'm just like, what new can I do, or what can I do to like just make this one like maybe I don't want to say better, but just more or
Yeah,
something.
you always want to do something a little,
Yeah, yeah.
or
So
share something else,
but
open another side of you or
for
something.
sure, or
Yeah.
show, yeah, do something a little different. But
What I mean, this is like a young student of art question, but how did you and not that I'm young, but but how did you end up like getting in, I guess, to say it in the
and
simplest terms? Like, how did you end up at Residency, which is like, the dopest spot right now?
yeah, I actually met Rick in New York.
Oh,
He
wow.
was in New York, and but I had like kind of been talking to him a little,
Mm,
and he came by the studio, and then I sent him some work when he was doing Felix
okay.
Art Fair, and then from there, we went on and did the solo, but like
So it's,
started.
it's reaching out, sending stuff, and starting
Yeah,
starting the
or like
communication.
a lot of times what happens is people find you on social media now.
Mm,
I feel like that's kind of where like a lot of like the people I later meet in person
mm,
from the art world usually meet them like via a message on social media,
mm,
or they see your work, or they become interested in like what you're making type of thing.
mm,
But even before that, like showing in like just in LA, like I feel like a lot of it was just through like peers that I knew who were like, "Oh, you wanna join this group show?" Or like sometimes my professors open up doors for me.
mm,
So I'd always try to like keep cool and like help them out with whatever I could. I just kind of be a hand
mm.
there, and then that opened up doors for me. And
But I'll also always have the work ready, right?
that's the other thing too.
You
It's like
gotta have the work.
if you're constantly like on the grind making,
Yeah,
then that shouldn't be a problem.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
that's the having the work is for sure important.
That's the numero uno right there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Continue to produce.
Yeah, I think it's important for sure to just maintain the thing going, the machine flowing.
Yeah. And so you have those two shows, and right now you're back in LA. You have a studio out here now. You're
Yeah,
grinding. You're
I'm
putting
in
things together.
downtown. Yeah, I'm just working for stuff that's towards the end of the year. I have a couple group shows and a solo in December.
Mm,
Some just in the studio making work, and
mm,
these are all like abroad. So it's kind of now I have this opportunity to like show in other countries,
mm,
which is like it's been a cool experience too. Just
mm,
because I think a lot of like what do people think about like work that's coming out of like LA,
mm,
or at least my view of LA,
mm.
and it's just been nice to see them venture into like other countries like Italy or England and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a couple group shows, and then the solo is in Milan at F2T Gallery in Milan, Italy.
Okay.
So I'm still jamming those out right now.
Hmm. I'm trying to think of a question to like talk about what you just said right now, where like your work is traveling the world, and people are seeing it as like a mirror to Los Angeles or something, like a portal to
Yeah.
LA. So like how do you have a thought when you put your work together as to like this is what I want people to see? Does that come through, or do you just like paint organically whatever comes out, or are you conscious of the fact that, oh, people are gonna look at LA this way, so I need to represent?
I don't think I don't think I'd approach it like to try to polish a view of LA. Like it's very natural and like I'm showing you like
Not to polish, but to show. Like, do you think about it ahead? Like, this is what I want to show.
yes, I a little. I mean, I think like for example, like for the December show in Milan, like I'm doing a automobile related or automobile themed body of work, and and the reason why it's obviously because LA is a big car city,
Yeah.
and the northern, from what I've heard, is that the northern part of Italy, where like Milan is at, it's kind of like the Detroit of that country, where like cars are manufactured. I think Fiat is right around there, and so I'm sure because automobiles are built there, like they're probably more in tune with like automobiles, and so I'm trying to bring like our life in cars there just to see like what the contrast might be to their lifestyle in cars. Um, that's one, but then for other places, it's more of just like it's very organic. Of like, I don't think all the symbols will come across, but they come across to me, and then I feel like they're genuine symbols of this place, so I need to put them there.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean that's our language, and
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
if they don't know it, they can look it up, or
But that's why
they can
that's why
decipher it in their own way.
that's why I get curious because I'm just like, oh, it's gonna go over there. Like I have one painting where there's like a TV like in the background, and it's like the Kirk Gibson home run that Vince Scully called out. So then I wonder, like and then I also I don't know like in Europe people watch baseball the way that we do. So it's like you know what I mean?
But yeah, but that's like the beauty, like you said earlier, like it's a slow read, little by little.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
if somebody takes the time
To look it up.
to
And
look it
stuff.
up and to dig in
Yeah.
and to find that, then
Yeah.
they'll also get the benefit of like, bam,
That's the thing,
because
that's the event. Yeah.
yeah. When I look through something and I'm like, oh, okay, okay, like the discoveries, that's a word that I used a lot when I was like in theater, and it was like,
Yeah.
you always want the discoveries. You want your own discoveries. You want to go through something and be like, boom, like,
For
oh, this
sure.
is it. So yeah, I
So,
could totally see that.
But yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like I wouldn't want to polish it. Like it's
Yeah,
easy
yeah.
I think to like give you an idea of LA. Like yeah, I could throw on like the freeways and some palm trees.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I feel like I guess the scenes that I'm making are a little bit more personal, so it might take more of an insider thing to look at.
Yeah.
So just I wonder like how those things end up or how they'll be seen in these places. But yeah, I don't want to polish them. Like I want them to feel like
Yeah. No, and then also like I didn't mean like do you like clean things up to show a better image?
Yeah.
I just meant like, do you think of it consciously that they're gonna be seeing it? So you do think of it consciously
Yeah,
that
yeah,
this is
yeah.
gonna be
For sure.
seen by somebody, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
gonna. I want to show them this. Like
Yeah.
this is what I want to show them. And let them figure it out. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a trip. That's nice, dude. Must be good to have like shit traveling around the world.
It's nice. It's a blessing for sure.
How is it different from like being a student and having an assignment? I don't know how that works. Of course, I didn't get to go to grad school, but like, what is the motivation to work in school compared to like the motivation to work now?
Yeah.
Is it still something that's driven by you? Is it something that's driven by the art economy? Is it something that's driven by wanting to leave a mark in history?
Right. Oh man, it's definitely I think it's driven still by me. I just like really love to work. And like I feel like the more deadlines I do or the more stuff I do, the more accomplished I feel myself. Like I feel like I need to just be working all the time. And that makes me sort of happy just having this hyper focus. But yeah, I mean, to talk about deadlines, like I feel like school sort of preps you like extremely well, and then you go out and like these deadlines just become a little bit more serious because now you're like dealing with people instead of like assignments that are for school. But you could, I still see it that way. Like there's nights when the nights get long because you have to work, because you have to finish things a certain day. But I think overall school really preps you for like for that. And like for me, it does bring a lot of motivation to know like, oh shit, I have to like get this done in this amount of time. So it also kind of helps you think about things that you can kind of execute in a certain way or quicker, you know? Yeah. But I think for the most part, I'm still like kind of working like to spill out me. Yeah.
Do you work in your own studio? You have
Yeah, I
you
have
don't
my
share
own
space with
studio.
nobody. You just like
Well, I mean, like I have a studio that I have a section for like my girlfriend that runs her brand. But yeah, other than that, it's just me and her in there.
nice.
Yeah.
So that's but yeah, I mean you work late, nobody's bothering you.
No. It's like it's pretty convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to imagine like your workflow.
I do like rotations. So like I have about maybe 8 or 9 paintings hanging. And so I kind of like just go around. I loop. So I'll do a day in each one. Because I paint in oil too, so it's like it just
Let it dry.
it takes a while. Yeah, you know, it feels a little tacky if you touch it the next day. So I'll let it sit, and like in between that, I'm jumping around, touching all the other ones or drawing. But yeah, I kind of work in like the cycle thing like that. Like I don't just give my whole attention to one.
How many paintings do you work on at once?
Right now I'm doing like
always
9.
Oh shit.
But it's like, you know, they're all different scales too. Like some are small, some are big. But I just kind of find it most effective to do it that way. Because I leave things to dry. But I'm still like looking at them because they're there. So what ends up happening too is like when I discover one thing from one, it kind of feeds into the other.
When did you pick up oil? How did you ever work on acrylic?
Yeah, I did. I started in acrylic. So I got some acrylics. I made like maybe a couple paintings when I was in high school of acrylic. And then I went through some of ELAC with acrylic. And then finally I jumped into oil. And Sergio
Turan, yeah.
taught me a lot of it.
Shout out to Sergio.
Yeah, he taught me a lot of the glazing stuff that I still do. And
What's glazing?
it's like a very diluted layer of paint. It's like very mirror-like. So it's a very old master, like Flemish approach. But like the way that I like to use it, it's like when I'm done doing a portrait, like if there's like reds that I want to sneak in there, like that make it feel like more fleshy or bloods in there, then that's kind of what I'll glaze in there softly. Or stuff like that, you know?
Got it.
But yeah, it's like a very mirror layer. So you're building it up. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it gives it a crazy depth. So he like taught us all that stuff at ELAC, and
That's where you picked.
that's where I picked up oil, yeah.
I mean, I had a conversation when I first met Sergio, and he's going to be on this show soon, too.
He should be on this show.
Yeah, he's going to be on soon. We've talked already.
Yeah.
But when I first met him and I saw his work, I used the same, because you said it's like an old master's thing. I was like, dude, your work is like a master work. Like,
yeah.
He does have like that old master's like vibe.
I like even like I mean he'll tell you his story when you meet him, but like he was like the only professor besides like Robert Acuna who was at ELAC who was like brown, you know. So like I really looked up to like what he'd done because I was like, oh shit, like he did it. Like it kind of gave me like this like thing where I was like, oh shit, I could probably do it.
Yeah.
And he also went to New York for grad school.
Yeah.
So there was like a thing where like, oh shit, like
Yeah, you guys
seeing the influence there, I was like, man, maybe I can go one day and like leave the hood for a while.
Damn.
And then come back, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it played a lot. Like he definitely played a lot in like the inspiration.
And the transition was difficult from acrylic to oil. I don't know. I never so.
Yeah, because you're introducing chemicals like you know linseed oils and mineral spirits where like acrylic.
So there's a lot of other stuff you have to do to the paint to make it work.
Yeah, yes and no. Like it just depends. Like I've narrowed down now to just use linseed oil, this glaze medium that I mix, and that's it.
Okay.
But there's people who add. There's like so much stuff you can do to it to do different things.
To dilute it, to make it
To
thinner,
make it pasty, to make it thick.
Yeah.
It just depends. But for me now, I just narrowed down to that. Like I think the simpler I
You
keep it.
found your place.
Yeah, yeah. But there is a lot that's like a little bit more complex than acrylic, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing too is the drying time. You know, I feel like if you over mix with oils, it's easy to make mud colors. So
Brown.
that doesn't look always so appealing, but you know, but technically it's like it has its differences in acrylic, but I mean I feel like nowadays I see a lot of people going back to using acrylics because now they're making them with more pigment, they're richer in color. That's the other thing too that I liked about oils more. It was just the saturation of color because the pigments were so strong. You see the difference like very quickly. Yeah.
What's it like now for you to, or how is it that you come across like shows now? Do people call you? Are you sending stuff?
For the most part, it's like people that I kind of already know who set things up and introductions to other people from people I know.
No, I mean, you're fairly new to this entire, like, global art world.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that I just started showing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is the goal? Like, I don't know where, because I don't know, so I don't know where you're aiming for now, or like, where do you want to show next, or how does that step work? Do you just keep painting and let shit happen, or do you have to knock on doors?
Kind of like I like haven't really knocked on a lot of doors. Like it's been more of like I said, like network that sort of you meet.
Yeah.
So that was one of the benefits of going to New York is that I met people there, and then I know people in my hometown. Luckily, I'm from a city that's big and it has a big art world. So. Yeah. So, like, I wasn't going back to a hometown in the middle of, like, kind of nowhere. Like, I was coming back to a big network, too, here. So, going there, having that, yeah, it opened up more doors. But, yeah, for the most part, it's been kind of just, like, having work with people either through group shows and then being offered another show, that type of thing. But it's been that mostly. Or, like, meeting people, like, just meeting people through other people also helps. And then social media. It's one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, there's no clear like and one and only path, right? You just kind of like.
That's the thing too.
You just kind of like.
School doesn't.
I guess I want to think of it. I'm gonna try to do the comparison to like being a mole and you're digging. If you happen to dig this way, you just happen to find that. If you happen to dig this way, you find that.
Yeah. There's no straight line.
You just never know which way you're gonna dig. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no straight line to it. Like I feel like there's people who extremely talented who take a lot longer to get to these places or whatever, some people do it quicker overnight and some people don't, but it's like it's hard to understand who controls that. Like you're just kind of like you're making it work and some people can work with it and some people can't. So it's just if you're lucky you find those people. There's like
some galleries can look at your work and be like, I know exactly where to put that, or I know exactly who to place this with.
I think more or less, yeah.
Where other galleries will be like, I just don't have anybody who would be interested in that.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And so I think that's what also separates what some galleries do. I think some galleries kind of like specialize, I would say, in like certain aesthetics.
Yeah.
Where others are more open. So there's like that too, I think.
Got it.
But I don't know. It's like it's crazy. It's like I feel like it's like partially like sort of I guess luck of who you meet.
Yeah.
And then also too
and being likable sometimes.
I mean, I would say that comes in too. Like they notice that.
Or
you
being awesome.
hard.
Like you have to be a little bit of both, right?
Yeah. The other thing too is like when I was like, even when I was like in ELAC or Long Beach, like every time somebody asked me to show during those days, I'd show it. Like
yeah.
So it put my work.
Yeah, be down then.
Yeah, like I never like I rarely said no to like any sort of like offer. So I like even though I was an undergrad, like I was putting in work in different little spaces. And then that kind of starts something, I would say,
Yeah, you start to connect with people.
And then you go to the openings and stuff like that, and then you intermingle a little bit more. But yeah, I wouldn't say there's like a straight route. Like, I don't think nobody can tell you exactly what to do. It's really up to like how you approach it.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say, do the work.
I think that's the only thing you could control.
Do the fucking
Yeah,
work.
that's the thing you definitely
Yeah.
control. It's like what you're making and how much of it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Other than that, everything else is kind of like. I mean, you could walk and knock on doors, but I don't know.
Well, some people have that skill. Like,
Yeah,
some people have that skill to be like the gift of God. Be like, hey, what's up? My name is da da da.
sure,
You know,
for
I'd
sure.
like to. I really love whatever.
I don't think I was like that.
Yeah.
So I had to like
It's tough.
work more on like the work. I focus more on the work.
And then even us that are not always like that, because people think that I'm like that way, but I'm not really. Like, I don't like to sell myself. I don't
Yeah.
sell myself a
It's
lot. I like to
uncomfortable.
talk a lot.
Yeah.
I like to ask questions a lot, but I can't come in and be like, hi, I'm this, and da da da. So, but even the ones that don't often do it, sometimes you like bump into the right person,
Yeah.
and that right person just gives you the right vibe where you're like, whoosh.
For
Oh, let me
sure.
tell you about myself.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so that's just when two like people that are meant to meet like happen
Yeah.
to meet, at
Yeah.
the right time and at the right day and everything. And I've seen it happen in
Yeah.
person with people that that's why I'm saying this, because I've seen people that they don't go out selling themselves, but all of a
just-
sudden we happen to meet somebody at the right place, and
They get along.
and they're
stuff.
both stuck like standing, and then they're like, so,
Yeah.
and he's like, well, and then
And
they
it
just
clicks.
they click and they
Yeah.
talk about their work, and all of a sudden they're working on something because they're both amazing people
Exactly.
who just hadn't been like put together before.
Yeah, and that's why I think there's like a little bit of like a luck element, like where
Yeah.
you walk around and you just bump into like this person or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do the work, show the work.
And try, I guess, to like talk to people.
Yeah.
It's a different time though. I feel like social media is so involved now that I mean it's there. If you know how to use it, you could put your
Yeah.
stuff out there too.
Yeah, I mean, even for I think there's different kinds of way to use social media, and I think for artists, I don't know how you users. I mean, I'm following you, but I don't.
Yeah.
I think it's okay for an artist just to show a painting every once in a while. They don't have to like do reels and do all this other stuff. I think an artist can just like show his work once a week or something like that.
I think it just depends how aggressive you want to.
Yeah, and then some people they just like to.
Yeah, some people bombard. It just depends, I guess, how aggressive you are with it.
Yeah, I used to not like seeing people's work in progress.
Used to not like?
Not like it.
Oh, okay.
I was like, I don't want to see that. Show it to me when it's done. When social media first started to do that, I was like, nah, don't show me the work in progress. But I know other people like that. But I mean, I'm okay with it now. But in the beginning, I didn't like it. I don't know why. I wanted to just see the final
I
product.
think if I see like paintings in progress, I kind of like seeing them sometimes because I try to dissect like
Yeah, because you're a painter, so you
process,
want to see
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, all right, cool. That's how you do that. So that's kind of interesting,
Yeah, yeah.
And then I feel like there's people out there who never post works in progress.
Nothing. Yeah.
'Cause they don't want to like show you how they do
They'll
things.
just post once a month or something.
Yeah. I think it just depends on like how aggressive you are with this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just move forward and say, like, do you have any ideas of what you want your future to be, or that's a very big question, but
yeah. I mean, like, man, I just want to have like, I wish I could just have like a building where I could paint all day.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely think about like real estate or like owning something where I can.
that's really smart. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm obviously working towards other things and like how we all work to pay life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in the long run, that would be something cool to have. But I'm also thinking of longevity, like, where my work will go, how it's going to progress, what places it's going to go to. I definitely, like, want to, like, do museum stuff, and not just gallery stuff, too. That's another thing, so.
Sick.
I mean, sometimes I even think about teaching a little, but that's another thing there. So it's a little loose right now, I think, in terms of.
Yeah. Well, you just finished school.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking.
So I think just mainly focusing on working right now. It's where
it'll start to like turn into something as the years go by, and you'll
Yeah.
decide which
route to take. I think, yeah.
routes.
Yeah, but for now, yeah, I think about stuff like that,
Yeah.
while I'm working, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to talk about?
I can't think of anything. I think we're good though, unless you have something else.
Well, there's a question that we ask at the end of each podcast.
I'm aware a little. Can you just like
So-
recite it though? Yeah.
No, I'm gonna ask you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if it's try to answer in one sentence,
Okay.
but if another planetary being came down and saw everything that you did, and they're like, "Damn, this guy does a lot of work. How does this guy do it?" He's painting. He's working on his masters. He's showing everywhere,
Yeah.
and not just that, but you're also like the actual act of doing it. They just look at you, and the first thing they say is, "How do you do it?" Elmer Guevara,
Yeah.
how do you do it?
I would say just don't run from the grind.
Just don't run from the grind.
Yeah. Don't run away from it. Don't run away from it. Just run it.
Grind it out.
Grind it out.
Grind it
Yeah,
out.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Bro, it's been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys next week.